Live from Atlanta, Georgia, the Atlanta 500, Grand National Stock Car Racing, NASCAR style, and the leader of the Atlanta 500 at 203 laps. Car number 12, a Chevrolet, Bobby Allison of Hueytown, Alabama. Running in second place, car number 71, Bobby Isaac. In third place and bidding for second, car number 43, Richard Petty. In fourth spot, car number 21, A.J. Foyt. The Atlanta 500 on ABC. ABC's Championship Auto Racing. The Atlanta 500 NASCAR Grand National Stock Car Racing. This ABC Sports Exclusive brought to you by Triumph Spitfire, a national racing champion that gets 27 miles to the gallon. And by Budweiser Malt Liquor, the first malt liquor good enough to be called Budweiser from Anheuser-Busch. Jackson, along with Chris Economaki and Gary Campbell, here in Atlanta, Georgia. And we're just about ready to show you the finish of the Atlanta 500, with most of the big boys still running. Richard Petty, the Allison brothers, A.J. Foyt, Bobby Isaac, Benny Parsons, Buddy Baker, all hanging in and battling away. A reminder that the American sportsman today will be seen following our coverage of the Atlanta 500. And the average speed so far on this race holding up very well with a very minimal number of yellow laps. The race is very fast on a tough track. And there is a talk drama right there being played out in the Richard Petty pit. The hood is up, and Chris, when the hood comes up on a race car at this point of a race, it usually means serious trouble.
He slowed down on the backstretch, Keith. It was not a routine stop. It was not for maintenance. And there is trouble. They've done some work on the car, and he's going back out. But he lost considerable ground on that slow approach to the pits. So that leaves Bobby Allison in the lead with a 6-second advantage over Bobby Isaac.
In the meantime, A.J. Foyt, driving the Woods Brothers Mercury, has been having better luck in the pits. With that story, Gary Campbell.
The story in the pit so far has been A.J. Foyt's ability to save him at least a couple of seconds on every pit stop. Later in the race, this could make a great deal of difference. Right now, it's the only thing that's kept A.J. running with the leaders.
Lap 209, here's the order. Car number 12, Bobby Allison, Junior Johnson Chevrolet leading. Bobby Isaac in car number 71, that's a Dodge, and he's been in a long dice with Richard Petty for that number 2 spot. A.J. Foyt moving up into third place on Petty's pit stop. Petty having to make the stop under the green. We had 7 cars on the same lap. Donnie Allison, number 27. David Pearson coming back to Grand National Racing in car number 15. Benny Parsons in car number 72, and Buddy Baker, car number 11, is 1 lap down. So the hot shoes are still running.
It's an amazing 500 because none of the leading cars have had mechanical trouble until just a moment ago when Petty made his stop. The speed of the race leader is turning the track at a little over 150 miles an hour, but the average is down in the low 120s because of the 4 yellow flags, 3 of which have been for debris on the track, and we had 1 accident earlier that knocked out 2 cars, Larry Smith and Ron Keselowski.
You're watching the Atlanta 500 live on ABC's Championship Auto Racing. We will continue from Atlanta, Georgia in a moment. Car number 12, driven by Bobby Allison, Junior Johnson Chevrolet, leading this race. Bobby Allison has been consistently one of the fastest Grand National stock cars on any racetrack so far this year. But in the 4 races that we have had, or 5 races we have had so far, he has not been able to get a win. He figures to be due in this race. He had a moment early in the race when he ignored a yellow caution flag. The first caution chose not to make a pit stop, then had to make the pit stop under green, and that put him almost a lap down. But he has worked his way through the capricious nature of stock car racing back into that lead position. And Chris, right now, I think he's running better than anybody else on that track.
He is running faster, Keith. That stop under the green flag. Despite having the fastest car, it took him 180 miles to regain the lead. 120 laps on this high bank, 1.5-mile track.
This fellow right here, A.J. Foyt, in the Woods Brothers Mercury 21, won this race last year. A.J., of course, put back-to-back wins on the board in NASCAR competition at Daytona and Ontario. A remarkable feat for a man who really doesn't spend that much time in this type of competition. But the Grand National fellows are glad to have him back running this event under FIA sanction, and of course it is sanctioned by the National Association of Stock Car Racing. And the leader is Bobby Allison at this time, with Bobby Isaac running second, A.J. Foyt third, and Donnie Allison is running in fourth spot. Mark Donohue is on the track, still running in the Matador, but early in the race, Mark Donohue had an exciting moment. This stocky, blocky little Matador came down off turn number 4, got a little bit out of control, and Mark took a spin on the home straight. He nipped the guardrail there, but he was able to put it back together and did a beautiful piece of driving, actually, to keep it under control.
He was one of 2 drivers that spun. As I said before, a new coat of sealant was applied to the racetrack, which made it quite slippery, and Donohue was the first victim of a slippery turn. And then Dick Brooks spun in the very same place. The amazing thing about this spin you're seeing in slow motion here is that it did not bring out the yellow flag. Donohue nicked the front of the car on the inside guardrail right in front of his pit, shifted down a gear and kept going around, and the Roger Penske crew did some quick work in getting the sheet metal off the tires, and he's back in the race, but about 4 laps down.
And there's Mark still chunking away and still running very well. He's been turning consistently at around 37-plus seconds. That means he's running right around 145 to 147 miles an hour. Now, to set you up, as you saw when we came on the air, Richard Petty was in the pits, had the hood up, and at that time he was dicing with Bobby Isaac. They had a real joust going for a while for second spot, but that pit stop has dropped Richard back into 8th place, and he is 3 laps behind the leader, Bobby Allison. We'll put a clock on Bobby Allison to give you an idea of how fast they're running. Now, he's been running right around that 36-second plus mark all day. You run 36 seconds even on this track, you're turning it better than 152 miles an hour, 152.2. The track distance is 1.52 miles around, 328 laps or 500 miles.
The groove in the early part of the race, Keith, was down on the lower side of the track, and then as it wore on, the cars could move higher and higher, and it's made for better racing. Before, they sort of had to follow one another through the low side, afraid to move up. But now on the past the 150 lap mark, they're starting to venture up high on this newly resurfaced banking.
And at 218 laps, the leader is Bobby Allison, and that's the man we have the clock on right there. Now he's heading out of turn number 4, running for the start-finish line, and he stops the clock at 36.3 seconds. That's 150.942 miles an hour. Chris, that's very quick.
That's very quick. I have my watch on Richard Petty, and he just turned that same lap at 36.4, a tenth of a second slower. So whatever the trouble was that Petty had, they seem to have taken care of it during that pit stop.
ABC's Championship Auto Racing today on the mile-and-a-half oval in Atlanta, the Atlanta 500. Bobby Allison has the lead, Bobby Isaac is second, A.J. Foyt third, and we'll continue our coverage of the Atlanta 500 in just a moment. Car number 76 is Ben Arnold, spinning on lap 221, and that brings out the yellow flag. Take a look at it. You see Ben got it turned around coming off turn number 2 over there, and he really was swinging around, but he held it, and we had another car go into a spin. That's
Cuckoo Marlin.
Cuckoo Marlin from Chattanooga, number 14. Very, very slick during the qualifying. A lot of the fellas came in earlier in the week talking about how slick it was, particularly the high groove. The point Chris made, and we saw it, I think, right about the middle of the race when Richard Petty really was the first man to start going way up on top, and ran very well. We're now at lap 222. And it is Bobby Allison, Bobby Isaac, A.J. Foyt, David Pearson, David working his way right up in there, and Donnie Allison. Donnie Allison is driving car number 27. That is a Chevrolet, comparable. In fact, it looks very much and is painted very much like the car that Bobby is driving. Of course, he said he was going to make the television show, Chris.
That's right. He wanted to know what time we came on the air. He's been with us on our live shows here in the last few weeks. And now with the yellow flag out, just about everybody comes in the pits. Here's Bobby, the leader. The the Junior Johnson pit crew working on it. He giving some sort of instructions there with his fingers.
I think he probably wants 4 tires. He's holding out the 4 fingers. He'll probably go back out, or they may elect to go for all 4 right here. Let's see what they do.
That was a pretty quick stop. There's his brother Donnie. The cars are painted up quite alike, but the funny part of it is Bobby's car has a national sponsor, and Donnie's got an outlet store in his hometown sponsoring this one.
That's my hometown. He's in there a little bit crooked, but they've been so much oil dropped out there today that all of them are picking up a lot of oil, and they're getting a pretty good sandblast on the windscreen. And as you come now off turn number 2 and head up the back straight into turn number 3, you're beginning to get a pretty good glare off the sun, too.
After moving into the lead, Keith, Bobby Allison built a 10-second lead over Bobby Isaac, which this yellow flag will erase and condense the leaders, so all of the work and all of the time that he built up now is out the window, and we wait for the oil to be dried up on the track where that spin took place. About 55 laps are what can be run on a tank of fuel and a set of tires today here at Atlanta International Raceway. We can log this stop and see whether anybody else has to stop under the green. Incidentally, the leader, Bobby Allison, and Richard Petty just a few moments ago were the only contenders to stop today under the green. All other pit stops have been made under the yellow.
Of course, it is unusual to have 2 brothers as skilled as the Allison boys, who are as competitive among the leadership of NASCAR Grand National Stock Car Racing, and they run each other just as hard as they'll run A.J. Foyt or anybody else. Bobby Allison in conversation with Gary Campbell talking about Donnie's car.
Does it bother you knowing that your brother Donnie's in the same race with you?
Well, I don't know whether you'd say bother me. I have the utmost respect for him. I know that if somebody puts him in a good car, well, he's capable of getting the job done. And he is by far one of the guys that really get the most out of a car. And whenever he is in a good car, he proves it. And being that we built the car, I kind of got mixed emotions because I feel it's a good car and I want it to be a good car, and I know that if it's too good, he'll beat me.
Okay, that's Brother Bobby leading this race, talking about Brother Donnie, who is one of his pursuers, and there's Bobby back into the pits now. He'll undoubtedly take on more rubber on the left side.
The reason for these pit stops being made in 2 installments is so as not to let this pace car go by, because once that happens, you've lost a lap. So what they do is a certain amount of work. They keep their eye on the pace car around the track. When it gets to a place where they can beat it out, they send the car out. He goes around, is scored, and then comes back in and have the rest of the work done without losing any ground, because they're proceeding rather slowly around the track. There he goes back out now. Junior Johnson's boys doing a fine job in keeping him in contention all day today.
And there goes Ben Arnold's car headed for the garage, under tow. That'll reduce our field down to, I believe, about 27 cars at 225 laps. Of course, we've had some shuffling here because of these pit stops under the yellow. But as the shuffling started, the order was Bobby Allison, Bobby Isaac, A.J. Foyt, David Pearson, and Donnie Allison, and that has been changed some. A.J. Foyt back in the pits. The Woods brothers have been working on the wedge. Now, they raised the trunk lid on that car, and this is the 3rd time that I've seen them bring it up, and the 3rd time that they've made some chassis adjustment in the car, because they're trying to catch number 12, and number 12 has been flying.
You know, Petty, who came out of the pits a while ago, whatever they did to his car, they did it very well, because he's really running now, and he may just get one of those laps back if he can get by Bobby Allison. A.J. Foyt has just left the pits. We're going to see a garrison finish in this one with so many contending cars in the same lap near the end. Foyt's mechanics just changed the setting on his car, and Petty's men, when he was in, they did that too. They change the amount of weight on the rear wheels. As the track gets slippery, they move to the inside. Now, here's his 3rd pit stop. This is a 3-installment stop, and now it's the windshield that's getting the attention on that 1972 Chevy Monte Carlo. Got the great battle of the brands with a Chevrolet leading, a Dodge 2nd, a Mercury 4th, and a Chevrolet 5th, and a Ford next, followed by a Mercury. And for a while, Petty's Plymouth was in there challenging. So the people who like to see different nameplates in contention are having a field day here at Atlanta this afternoon.
We're at lap 226. We've got to go 3:28 for the 500 miles, so we're coming up on 100 laps to go. And once the leaders have all made their 2nd and, if necessary, 3rd pit stops under the yellow flag, then we'll sort them out for you. A reminder that the American Sportsman will be seen today following our live coverage of the Atlanta 500, which is due to end at 6 o'clock. So the American Sportsman comes on today after our motor racing.
You know, Keith, some people wonder why these long yellow flags for debris or oil on the track prevail, but at Rockingham a couple of weeks ago, a little piece of debris on the track flew up and cut an oil line on Benny Parsons' car, and in the space of 100 yards, that car pumped 14 quarts of hot oil out on the track. It just cleaned the engine out, and he spun in his own oil, and it could have been a tremendous crash, but fortunately he spun into the infield, and they hung the yellow out right away, got everyone slowed down, and then the crewmen get out there with the oil dry to clean up the track.
We've had a couple of fellows get involved today. It was not a major wreck, but we did have two fellows involved, as Ron Keselowski and Larry Smith. Larry Smith spun on the back straightaway. Keselowski came along and nipped the rear end. Both of them spun out of the race and both went to the garage with some battering. The Atlanta 500 on ABC's Championship Auto Racing. More after this. Here's your order at 228 laps, 100 laps to go. Bobby Isaac, number 71. David Pearson, number 15. A.J. Ford, 21. Bobby Allison, number 12. Donnie Allison, number 27. The story on David Pearson, Chris, is an interesting story. This is his first outing, driving car number 15. The veteran out of Spartanburg, South Carolina. He is driving a Ford, qualified at better than 153 miles an hour, and now he's just been hanging on, hanging in, and now he's in second place.
Yeah, but more importantly, Keith, is the fact that the engine in this car is a 351 cubic inch Ford Cleveland engine, thought by many people to be too small for competition where the maximum limit is 430 cubic inches. They're giving away a good piece of engine size there, but Bud Moore, the car owner and engine builder, has proved that with a good running small engine you can be competitive, and that was the philosophy of Roger Penske for Mark Donohue. That Matador has a 366 cubic inch engine, and every other car in this 40-car race has an engine either right up there at 429 or 426, right near the maximum.
That fellow, there was number 72, that was rolling along there at the picture of David Pearson is Benny Parsons, and Benny is hanging right onto the coattail of the leaders today, too. He's been having a good drive.
Benny's one of the better drivers who has never really had a first-class ride. He's been troubled with the finances, as so many of these fellows are, but he's hanging in the same lap with the leaders, and that's the important thing. For in the closing laps, you never know what kind of trick one can pull off. We have a beautiful day here in Atlanta, and a crowd estimated at better than 80,000. Which means it'll be a long time getting out.
Yeah, the crowd was 88,000. That's the record set here in 1969. But today we've got, they tell me, right up around 83,000. So it's going to be a week-long trip out of town. And in the pits, along pit road, here is Gary Campbell.
The Woods brothers have been working on this car of A.J. Foyt's all afternoon to try to get it competitive. They've just made another chassis adjustment. Evidently, from what they're signaling, A.J.'s having a problem of pushing in the turns. They still do not have the problem corrected, but they feel they're closer to it now, and A.J. should be a little bit more competitive as this race closes.
All right, Gary, you know, I finally figured out, Chris, what pushing means. That when you turn the car left and it keeps going right. It only took me 93 years to figure that out. The winners so far along the Grand National Trail, of course, are Richard Petty, A.J. Foyt, Richard Petty, A.J. Foyt, and Bobby Isaac winning at Carolina 500. But this afternoon, we're back under the green, running at lap number 230, and let's see what happens. As we go into the final 100 laps of the Atlanta 500 with just under $113,000 at stake, as Bobby Isaac in car number 71 at Dodge is out winging in front. Now let's watch and see what happens to David Pearson in that, and I say little reservedly, but the smaller engine Ford.
As the track gets slipperier, Keith, that car has less of a handicap. But you can't use all the power on a slippery surface.
David Pearson, long-time veteran. He's a tough one. Hanging right in there behind and moving by Buddy Baker. Buddy Baker has been out running all day, but Buddy is several laps back now. And we've got a spin. Somebody sideways coming off turn number 2.
It's Benny Parsons, our taxi driver from Detroit. And they're all getting by. And another yellow comes out.
Now, we've had, on 4 occasions, we've had drivers spin today, but they have been able, in 3 of those occasions, to stay in the race. You know that he's going to have to come in and get new rubber because he has flattened one side of that tire. Take another look at it.
You know, he's all by himself there, Keith, and this is the area where 2 other drivers started to get in trouble. In fact, Richard Petty earlier, look at him hold it without letting the back end get around. He's really fighting to keep the car straight. But it turns around on him, Benny's an ex-taxi driver from Detroit and a real heavy-footed competitor. The flag is down on that one. So he got it back in gear and he brought it around. And I'm sure that the tires are flat-spotted on that car.
I'm looking for him, but I haven't found him yet. Dave Marcus has come back into the pits. Marcus has had a rap with a wall or tangled with somebody because the sheet metal on the right front of his car is banged up. But this fellow right here, Harry Hyde, put that Bobby Allison out in front at the Carolina 500 at Rockingham, and Bobby had some rough moments in the middle of that race, but he set up and took control of it late. And with 233 laps behind us now, 243 laps behind us, Bobby Isaac is sitting up there in front again.
You know, they didn't put the yellow out for Parsons' spin, and he's back in the race and running as hard as he can, but he's obviously got 4 flat-spotted tires. So it's going to be a rough ride for Benny Parsons in number 72 until his next pit stop when he can change rubber.
John Brunner Jr. had his yellow flag up, and the whole field seemed to react a little bit. Those who saw it come up and back down for a moment, but then he dropped the flag when he was determined that Parsons had his car under control. Now, obviously, he had not dropped debris, nor had he spilled oil on the track, that it was nothing more than a spin. The toughest spots on this racetrack are coming off turn number 4 down the pit straight and going into turn number 1. But surprisingly, Chris, coming off turn 2 today has been very fickle.
Isaac is having one of his better years. A former champion won the 500 at Rockingham. And last fall, took one of these K&K Dodgers to the Bonneville Salt Flats and set any number of national and international records. And prior to that, had been over to the Talladega Speedway and run better than 200 miles an hour. Now he's coming up to Mr. Petty.
Well, he'd like very much to slide on by Richard and put him another lap down.
Let's watch.
Bobby Allison, number 12, has moved right in behind Bobby Isaac, having passed David Pearson. Pearson falling off the pace. Here's your first order. 4 cars in the same lap, and those 4 cars are Bobby Isaac, number 71, Bobby Allison, number 12, A.J. Foyt, 21, and David Pearson, number 15.
4 different makes, a Dodge, a Chevrolet, a Mercury, and a Ford.
The car in front is Richard Petty in the red and blue Plymouth. Right behind him is Bobby Isaac, and the car to the left there, that's Bobby Allison, number 12.
There's a gentleman for you. Petty pulls aside and lets those protagonists for the lead go by.
Remember, when we first came on the air, Richard Petty was in the pits, and at that time he lost 3 laps to the leaders, and he has not been competitive since he came back on the track. So here's the battle for first place.
A tremendous fan reaction here in Atlanta, Georgia. They're not only driver conscious, but car conscious as well. And now they're starting to rise as they watch Allison in the Chevy try down low.
He's got him. A horsepower drag down the home straight. Allison inside, Isaac high. Well, he may not have him.
This is auto racing. You know, that Chevy isn't as fast as it was earlier in the race.
Doesn't look it.
Isaac can almost hold him. It's faster, but not by much.
There were moments during the first 150 laps when Allison seemingly could just sprint by most anybody out there if he could clear traffic. A.J. Foyt has not been as competitive in the Woods Brothers Mercury as he had hoped, but he is still very much in it, running in 3rd place. Donnie Allison having dropped off a lap. 4 cars in the same lap. Number 12 leading right there. Number 71 to the right. The red Dodge is in 2nd place. A.J. Foyt is 3rd, and David Pearson is 4th. There's A.J. The temperature just barely got up to 60 degrees today. Very comfortable for a massive crowd, and you're watching the Atlanta 500 on ABC's Championship Auto Racing. More right after this. We have 4 cars in the same lap as we continue our coverage live of the Atlanta 500. Bobby Allison, number 12, is leading. Bobby Isaac is 2nd place. A.J. Foyt is running 3rd. Number 21. Car number 15, David Pearson, is 4th. And 1 lap down in 5th spot, car number 27, Donnie Allison.
Pretty tight, Keith. 3 seconds between the 1st and 3rd place cars.
The fellow who won the last time we presented Championship Auto Racing live on ABC was Bobby Isaac, number 71. He won the Carolina 500. He's running second right now, very much in a challenge for this one. Earlier we talked to Bobby about track conditions and what it's like to run here.
Bobby, what part is fatigue going to play in the late stages of this race?
Well, it's a big factor here because this is a hard racetrack to drive all day. The turns are longer than the straightaways. This means that you're staying in the turns twice as long as you're coming down the straightaway. The turns are half a mile, the straightaway's only half a mile. This means that you work longer than you rest on this type of racetrack. And it's hard. It's hard on the driver's neck. It's hard on his back to stay in that position all day. And you're going to have to be in pretty good physical shape in order to run the last 200 miles as well as you do the first 300.
How about tire wear? Is that going to be an important factor?
Well, it really is because tires has been wearing bad here in practice. They've been wearing bad in the past. And in our practice runs, it seems that we're wearing out the left front tire just about as fast as we're wearing out the two right side tires. So this means that maybe we're going to need 3 tires on the pit stop instead of 2.
How much is that going to slow you down?
Well, it slows you up, probably another 20 or 15 seconds in the pits on your pit stops. That means if another guy don't do it, that he's going to get out in 22 seconds. You're going to be out in about 35 or 38 seconds. And whether you beat him on the racetrack or not, if he beats you that much in the pits, you're going to wind up behind.
How about the track? Do you expect it to get very slick toward the late stages?
Well, it's really hard to say. We've had a lot of cold weather here. They have put a sealer on this track, but we haven't really had a hot enough day to find out if the sealer is going to give up or whether it's going to hold. We'll just have to wait to see how hot it gets this afternoon to find out.
Bobby Isaac talking with Gary Campbell, and it didn't get very hot today, and the day is winding down towards sunset now, and we are at 247 laps headed for 328 for the 500 miles in the Atlanta 500, and here's your leader, number 12, Bobby Allison. Bobby Isaac running in second, A.J. Foyt is third, David Pearson is fourth, and Donnie Allison has now passed David Pearson and is beginning to unwind himself.
They've just signaled A.J. Foyt turning the track at 36.4. That's 150 and a half miles an hour, and that's a fraction of a second faster than Allison's last lap.
We'll put a clock on the leader, Bobby Allison, to give you an idea of how well he's running. Actually, Chris, the old law of averages comes into play in everything, I think, that goes on in the world. Bobby Allison figures to be due because he has run very, very strong in at least 3 races. And as we put a clock on him here at lap 249, get an idea how well his equipment is running. He ran very well in Rockingham, but then blew up because he had to start from the back of the pack and really had to lean on his equipment.
Number one, the car not only is running well, but it's handling beautifully, and more importantly, Bobby is doing a fine job of driving. He stayed out of trouble. We've noticed several of the other drivers bobble on the slippery spots. Not so Bobby. And that's a tribute, of course, to Junior Johnson's setting up with this chassis. It just goes where he puts it, as the race drivers say.
36.2 seconds, that's 151.359 miles an hour. Now, that is faster than any of his pursuers at this point, and you can see what he's doing. He's just slowly, steadily beginning to pull away. Now he's moving past Cuckoo Marlin again. Cuckoo must be about 7 or 8 laps down at this point. Richard Petty is 3 laps down. He went 3 laps down when he went into the pits and had to take the hood up, and there's Richard right there. He is, at this moment, in a sense, out of it, unless we have some unexpected drama on the racetrack. He's going to have a couple of yellows to benefit from it.
It's not been Petty's day. His second car, the number 11 Dodge, driven by Buddy Baker, which incidentally is using the Hemi engine, which is the same engine that Bobby Isaac is using. It's not getting it done for Buddy Baker, but it's doing very well for Bobby Isaac. Petty's using the 426 Plymouth Wedge engine. 2 team cars with different type power plants in the race today.
Here are the cars that are out of the race at this time. Number 92, Larry Smith. Number 90, Dick Brooks. Number 88, Ron Keselowski. David Sisko, 05. Dick May, car number 53. Lem Blankenship, car number 83, went out. Dave Marcus, number 2. Dave hung in there a long time, but he finally had to give up. Jim Vandiver, number 31. Jim finished 3rd in the Carolina 500. Number 64, Elmo Langley, finally had to surrender. And Raymond Williams, car number 47, went out about 20 laps ago. Buddy Arrington, car number 67, he is out of the race. Red Farmer, number 97, was not a factor today. Joe Frasone almost had a bad fire. Joe bailed out. They got the fire out, though, before anything serious happened. Ben Arnold, you saw spin and go out a little while ago. So those are the fellows who have left us, and we have hit lap number 252.
Bill Gasaway, NASCAR Chief Inspector, Keith, at the drivers' meeting surprised everyone by saying that in addition to the pre-race technical inspection, which all cars must undergo before starting a NASCAR Grand National, that the first 5 cars that finish today will be impounded and checked for legality. It seems that in the practice and qualifying rounds, one car was found with a carburetor insert with little holes drilled in it to allow more gas and air into the engine. And, of course, that car was disqualified. And now they're beginning to wonder if some speed secrets haven't been developed by these mechanics that are getting more speed out of the cars. So they're going to look at the top 5 when it's all over.
Like somebody said the other day, they've devised a restrictor plate that melts at 100 laps.
Right.
The Atlanta 500, the order. Bobby Allison, Bobby Isaac, A.J. Foyt, back with more in just a moment. With 71 laps to go in the race, A.J. Foyt, number 21, the man who won this race last year, the man who has won back-to-back 500s this year, is running in 3rd place. In 2nd place is Bobby Isaac, and in 1st place is Bobby Allison.
You know, Foyt was a very welcome visitor from the USAC circuit when he started coming to NASCAR 10 years ago. But then there's a general feeling in the pits now that he perhaps may have worn out his welcome. We just looked at statistics. Foyt has won 6 500-mile races in 31 500-mile starts, whereas Petty, the biggest winner, has won 16 out of 120. One of the reasons Foyt does so well is the Wood Brothers pit crew, and there they are. Notice they follow the car all the way around. There's no dawdling. Every man watches the car every lap. They cooperate with one another, they make notes, and then when Foyt comes in, the work takes place at unbelievable speed. Without question, the finest pit crew in American stock car racing today, and A.J. Foyt certainly, with 3 Indianapolis victories under his belt, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, considered perhaps the finest all-around racer America has ever produced.
I was talking to Delano, I guess it was yesterday, and I asked him, have you fellas ever thought about going back to Indianapolis? Because they were there one time with a great deal of success. And he said no, because it comes at about the same time as the World 600, and they're stock car racers. They're committed to it, and they pet that car number 21 like it's a jewel, and it runs like a jewel most of the time. But right now, it's sitting in 3rd place.
It's a year-old Mercury. Keep a 1971 Mercury with a 429 Ford Boss engine, which has got the small carburetor restrictor hole, and he just doesn't quite have enough steam to stay with the leader.
Interesting note, too, Chris, that Foyt is running at the moment tires from last year. There's Benny Pearson, the fellow we saw take a spin, and he stayed right out on the racetrack. He may be getting a little bouncing and jouncing around because he's got to have that flat spot on his tires, but he stayed right out there. He's becoming every time you see him run, he's becoming a better driver. He's a young man. He's dedicated to his sport. The leader is Bobby Allison, running like he's on a string right now and stretching it out. And unless we have some yellow to close up the field, at the moment, I would say Bobby Allison has it in hand.
Well, you know, when the pit stops come under the yellow flag, it doesn't really make much difference how fast or how slow the pit crew works, because you get over to the backstretch and stack up behind the pace car. But if the green flag should stay out from now till the finish, then the pit crews play a very, very important part, because the responsibility is on their shoulders to get their man out there. And the way the race is going now, the field is thinned out. There are less than 30 cars on the track. The drivers all know the grooves. They know where the slippery spots are. And the chances of the yellow are not as rife as they were earlier in the race. We could see pit work under the green flags, and then the times become important.
We're at lap 262. Working 262 right now. We can anticipate pit stops to come around lap 282 up through lap 286. It'll come in that area. So we are about 20 laps away, plus from the final pit stop of the Atlanta 500, and I would guess at that time they'll probably only take gas if they think they can get away with it, and certainly no more than 2 tires.
Well, they may change 4. Whoops, there's a spin and turn 4.
That's George Altidy of Bristol, Illinois, spinning around.
And he's coming down in the path of some other cars.
Everybody's going to get by him. Again, a great job of driving by Altidy to keep his car off the wall, keep from scattering debris. He got it down where he had lost momentum, and then he's locked it. So let's take another look at it in slow motion. Tremendous smoke. Now, that could mean an engine let go.
That's tire smoke,
But it, in the main, is tire smoke. Now watch it. Yeah, this fella coming down on the low side here was the one that was about to get pinched, but he was able to wiggle through.
These drivers really are alert to these situations, but this sets up an interesting set of circumstances. Now they'll stop for gas, but no one can get enough gas to finish. They'll stop for fuel now. They'll get tires so they can race. They'll get 4 tires, the leading cars, and then at the end of the race, somebody will stop for just a splash of gas. It should be a dramatic finish.
That little splash of gas could be very expensive. The leaders hit the pits, and we'll be back with more of the Atlanta 500 right after this message. The yellow flag is still out. They're driving under caution here at the Atlanta 500. The leaders have hit the pits. We expect them to come back in a second time. We'll sort them out for you after they have made their second pit stops. The Atlanta 500 sanctioned by NASCAR, National Association of Stock Car Racing. Coming up next on the Grand National schedule, April 9, the Southeastern 500 at Bristol, Tennessee. On April 16, they'll have the Rebel 400 in Darlington, South Carolina. That's one of the premier events. And April 23rd, they go to North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. So keep those dates and those events in mind. The struggle in the pits goes on. A.J. Foyt having come back in for a second time. Earlier today, Gary Campbell talked with A.J. Foyt just prior to the start of the race. Here's that conversation.
Special significance for you?
Well, it's just like any big race you go to. The name of the game is try to win. That's the reason I'm here, to try to win the race.
One of the big things that you're known for is your strength in your arms, A.J. In a tough race like this, do you expect that fatigue in the later stages is going to be a big factor?
Well, in 65, I was standing by for relief for a driver, and we won the race there. And last year it was a tiring race, so it's just according to how the car is working today if it tires you. But definitely it does tire you here quite a bit more than most of the racetracks.
Is that because you're mostly in the turns?
Right, and it's considerable rough in the corners, and it's bouncing you considerable.
How do you expect tire wear is going to affect the outcome of the race?
Well, I think tire wear will be fine. It's really hard to say on your tire wear until you get under racing conditions. You can test and do a lot of things, but the proof of the pudding is actually race day under race conditions.
There was some word earlier that you might be running some of last year's tires because you felt they would do better in this particular track. Is there any truth to that?
Yes, I am running last year's tires. I don't know if they're better or not, but we're set up to put on this year's tires if possible, if we need them. But last year the tires worked quite well, and I won the race on the tires, so I'm going to give them a shot today, and if not, we'll switch over on one of the pit stops.
In the late stages of the race, some of the drivers have said that they thought it was going to get quite slick out there. What's your feeling having won this race 3 years in a row?
I think it's going to be slick from the word go with this new topping they have on there, and especially if somebody runs in second or third lanes. I think it's very possible you see a lot of cars spin.
Until the time the race actually gets going, then you don't know whether you're going to be changing 2 tires at a pit stop or 3 or 4.
This is quite true. We're running the new style tire on the left side, so if we change anything, it'll be just the right side, and maybe later on in the race we'll change all 4.
The leader, Bobby Allison, as of the yellow, is back in the pits. Up goes the hood. Uh-oh.
That's a little bit of oil they're giving him there, and they're changing the inside rubber. The outside rubber's been changed. He is now ready to race. The interesting part about this is this yellow flag came 8 laps too early. They've got enough gas to go to 230 laps. It's or 320 laps, I'm sorry, and it's a 328-lap race. So somebody's going to have to stop for a very, very quick couple of quarts, a gallon or two, between now and the end of the race, providing the green comes out quickly.
John Bruner Jr. has indicated a lap to go. We'll have the green. So we're getting ready to go racing again. The green flag is in hand.
Foyt's comments on his tires, if those were not the right tires, you can bet that the right ones were put on at the first pit stop. Whether they're using the same compounded style as he started, we don't know.
Race car pulled off, the field heading for the start-finish line, and it's Bobby Isaac, A.J. Foyt, Donnie Allison. We'll check it and see whether or not Donnie was able to unwind himself. Bobby, having made that extra pit stop, is well back in the pack as of this time. Eddie Pearson Allison's, as we went racing under the green, was 2 laps back of the leaders, and there is Bobby Allison starting his move through traffic. Bobby Isaac, A.J. Foyt, Bobby Allison, and David Pearson, as Bobby's already picked off David Pearson. In the pits, Gary Campbell.
Just talking with the Woods brothers, they say that they had to change from this year's tires. They had to change from last year's tires to this year's tires, but they're still not satisfied with the way the car is handling. They're still attempting to make their changes. They really don't hold much hope that they're going to be able to catch the leaders unless they can do it here in the pits.
All right, Gary. Meantime, A.J. Foyt and Bobby Isaac running hub to hub for a moment. A.J. closing again on Isaac. Bobby is the leader. A.J. is second and bidding for the lead. It is Isaac, Foyt, Bobby Allison, David Pearson, and then Donnie Allison.
Bobby Allison is 7.5 seconds behind the leaders now, having made his last pit stop rather late during that yellow flag period. We've got a good one going for the number 1 position.
And they're working lap number 270. We're 58 laps away from the finish of the Atlanta 500. The winner should get right at $19,000. There's 71, the leader. Right behind him in second place is A.J. Foyt. Donnie Allison is running right behind Foyt, but Donnie is a lap back, and he is in 5th spot.
The leaders have the advantage now. They have a clear field where Bobby Allison is back there in heavy traffic trying to get through to catch up.
Richard Petty is not running well at all. He just dropped off another lap to the leader, and Bobby Allison continues his pursuit. Now, it'll be interesting to watch. He had, what'd you say, Chris, 7+ seconds?
It was 7 last time by. We're going to check him now.
Because he does have, no question about it, the fastest automobile running here. Foyt won it last year. Bobby Allison won it in 1970, and there's Richard Petty, who was just lapped by Foyt.
Would you believe he's 8 seconds behind this time by?
Oh, wow. Well, Bobby Isaac's car that Harry Hyde put together for him, it's always a great automobile, and we saw that 2 weeks ago, and it's run like a clock here today.
Got to hand it to Petty for getting out of these boys' way and letting them have the racetrack to themselves. He's not only a fine driver, but he's a gentleman as well. 8 seconds still the interval for Bobby Allison back there, number 12, behind the leader, Bobby Isaac.
Meantime, A.J. Foyt has fallen off just a little bit. However, he can close that depending on how hard he feels he wants to run in the turn. We are at lap working 273 right now.
And Foyt now trying a new groove up high. Foyt is looking for a place on the track where he can run a little bit faster. His last time in the pits, the Wood brothers lifted the trunk lid and changed the weight again on that car, and that's about the 3rd or 4th time they've made that adjustment on that number 21 car, just trying to give A.J. the balance he wants so he can make a run for the lead.
If you wonder at times how much rubber they lay down on a racetrack, to give you an idea, when they started the race today, everybody had to run literally down low in that low groove. Now they are way up across the 3rd line, very near the top. So that's how much rubber they've laid down on it in the course of the race this afternoon. The Atlanta 500 on ABC's Championship Auto Racing. It's Bobby Isaac, A.J. Foyt, Bobby Allison in that order. We'll continue in a moment. The Atlanta 500 with Bobby Isaac, car number 71 leading. A.J. Foyt's in second place. Bobby Allison is in third. We now have 3 cars on the same lap. Those 3 leaders having just gone by David Pearson. He is 1 lap back, and Donnie Allison driving a new Chevrolet, the first time out for this car. Donnie is now 2 laps behind the leader.
15 cars out of the race, keep 25 on the track, and it's boiling now down. Bobby Allison cannot get closer than 8 seconds to Bobby Isaac, it seems, for one reason or another. And A.J. Foyt is the one driver that spooks Bobby Isaac. For 1965 in the Firecracker 400 in Daytona, Foyt passed him on the last corner to win a race that Isaac had dominated, and he has never forgotten that.
Let's again go to pit road with Gary Campbell.
I just spoke with Harry Hyde, crew chief for Bobby Isaac's car. and also to Junior Johnson, the crew chief on Bobby Allison's car. Both cars will be able to go all the way without another pit stop. So we don't anticipate any more problems in the pits from either of these two drivers.
Well, I tell you.
Want to bet?
Yep, I say he's going to be he's going to be down to fumes in that gas tank the last couple of laps.
They don't want that television announcer telling the guy in the next pit how much mileage they're going to get.
Coming up on ABC, future race coverage, the National Grand American Stock Car Race from Winston-Salem on April 8th. And on April the 23rd, the Trenton 200 from Trenton, New Jersey. On April 29, the National Championship Sprint Car Race from Terre Haute, Indiana. So we've got more automobile racing for you coming up in the month of April. Bobby Isaac, A.J. Foyt, Bobby Allison, the only three cars in the same lap at this time. David Pearson a lap down, and Donnie Allison is 2 laps down. And Donnie came here with a new car that had not run at all. The only running that automobile has done has been on this racetrack in the qualifying and practice and today's race. We've had a number of spins, but we have had no serious accidents. We've had a couple of fellows get tangled up, but they both walked away from it. NASCAR requires these Grand National stock cars to weigh 3,800 pounds.
There's a lot of weight turning these corners at these speeds.
Kind of an interesting point about this track. It's 1.52 miles. It's a high bank. The turns are banked at 24 degrees. It takes, if you're running at speed, about 36 seconds to make it around. 25 of those 36 seconds you are in a turning posture, so you are exposed to the pull of G-force all day long.
That actually makes for a better automobile race and an easier track to drive because the cars can run side by side through the turns. They're not that sharp. The straightaways here are rather short, and the track is generally described as being fat. It's not long and skinny, but it's wide. It makes for great racing.
There's your leader, Bobby Isaac, number 71. Dropping back, A.J. Foyt, car number 21. He is in second. In third place, coming off turn number 2, that is Bobby Allison. He is running third. And he is still not gaining, is he, Richard? Still running just about 7.5 to 8 seconds behind
8 seconds last time by. We're going to get a clocking now between Isaac and Foyt, which is 1.6 seconds. And Isaac is beginning to pull Foyt just a little bit.
Now we've had a correction from NASCAR on the relationship of David Pearson and Donnie Allison. That David Pearson is still in the same lap with the leaders. So we have 4 cars in the same lap, and that means Donnie Allison is only 1 lap back. And here now, Bobby Allison, the leader. A.J. Foyt, 1.7 seconds back.
Close, Miami, after 400 and some miles of racing, that's not a very comfortable margin, would you say, Keith?
No, sir. They are running right now in lap 284. 328 laps is a 500-mile race here in Atlanta, Georgia. And you're watching the Atlanta 500 live on ABC's Championship Auto Racing. Back right after this. Bobby Isaac continues to lead the Atlanta 500 in the red Dodge. In second place, A.J. Foyt. Third, Bobby Allison. And still not closing. Isaac holding it.
Well, we have a lot of different makes of cars in the race, but it's been 10 seasons since a Thunderbird appeared on a NASCAR Grand National. Here's number 19. It's a brand new Thunderbird driven by Henley Gray of Rome, Georgia, who's in the used car business. And I wonder who will wind up with this cream puff off the lot at the end of the season.
Average speed at 280 laps, 145 plus miles an hour. So when they have been able to run under the green, they really jumped on it. In case you wonder what happened to Richard Petty, well, the lanky fellow from Level Cross, North Carolina, is running in 6th place right now in car number 43. He's 3 laps behind the leader, Bobby Isaac. The NASCAR money winnings, A.J. Foyt with those big back-to-back wins at Daytona and Ontario, $72,000. Richard Petty has won $40,000. Bobby Isaac, $30,000. Bobby Allison $28,000. Jimmy Vandiver, who had a third-place finish in the Carolina 500, picked off $17,000 so far. So those fellas, anyway, have got a little walking around money.
A.J. made that in only 3 starts, Riverside, Daytona, and Ontario, with 1 or 2 of them. His statistical record in NASCAR is fantastic. He's got 6 500-mile victories in 31 starts. Petty, who's won 16 500-mile races, has started 120 of these long-distance events and has won $626,000 in 500-mile competition since 1959.
Car number 71, lap 290, is the leader. Isaac from Catawba, North Carolina. Second place, A.J. Foyt from Houston, Texas. And in third place, Bobby Allison from Hueytown, Alabama. And right next to his brother. Now that's Donnie in car number 27 right there in front of him, and Bobby running in third place, moving up to left, Donnie. That must create a firm jaw. Have your brother come up behind you, look at you, and then go flying by. We'll have to talk about that when the day's over.
He's also his car owner.
That's right. Once again, Gary Campbell along pit road.
We just spoke with the Woods brothers again, and A.J. Foyt is going to be 3 gallons of gasoline short of finishing this race on the green. So he's certainly hoping for a yellow. I'm beginning to wonder a little bit if we weren't getting some misinformation from Bobby Isaac and Bobby Allison's crew chiefs, because we know they all have the same amount of gas. They all made the pit stops at the same time.
I would say you can bet on it that they're going to have to come in, because the most frustrating thing in the world is to suddenly have victory in sight and run out of gas. A lot of folks can talk to you about it. Mark Donahue being one recent nominee for that award.
That's right. Mark is still in the race in that Matador. He's back racing with Buddy Baker, several laps off the pace, thanks to that unfortunate early race spin we saw on tape at the top of the program.
James Hilton, who is leading in NASCAR Grand National points, is still running, and Jimmy Hilton is a percentage race driver. He knows full well, as an independent, he does not have the equipment to go out there on the racetrack and run with Bobby Isaac, or run with Allison, or Foyt, or any of these people. But his intent, his race strategy, his commitment, really, is to go out, run the race, and finish it. And that's exactly what he's been doing, and it's paying off.
Hilton had it tough at Ontario. He put his car through inspection. They took the spark plugs out, and he touched the starter to clean out the cylinders, and someone forgot to disconnect the coil wire, and one of the plugs sparked, and his car caught fire, and the engine burned up. $3,000 engine.
That's why he wasn't very pleasant. Ontario.
Do something to your attitude.
Bobby Isaac from Catawba, North Carolina, is the leader in car number 71.
You know, that's an interesting car and crew combination, because most of the top stock car drivers race for crew chiefs from the South. Isaac's crew chief is Harry Hyde from Louisville, Kentucky, and is looked upon, or was at the time he first came to NASCAR, as an outsider. He's a welcome, of course, man now, and he's twisting the wrenches just as well as any of the Southerners.
Again, the relationship of your leader, Bobby Isaac, to the second place car, being driven by A.J. Foyt. And third place, Bobby Allison. And Bobby apparently got by Donnie with no trouble. They're working just to finish lap number 295 in the Atlanta 500. There are the leaders, and more right after this. Car number 71, Bobby Isaac. He's the leader. A.J. Foyt second, Bobby Allison third, David Pearson four, Donnie Allison 5, a lap down. Richard Petty 3 laps down, he is sixth.
Isaac's speed is 125.828, but his race pace is better than 150 miles an hour out on the track now in that K&K Insurance Dodge. There's car 45. That's driven by Leroy Yarborough, who just a few seasons ago was the king of the NASCAR Grand National Circuit as he drove for the Ford factory team. He had a terrible season last year. He was in the hospital 3 times with Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and then at Indianapolis had a horrifying crash at practice, and we're glad to see Leroy doing so well on the comeback trail.
He said yesterday that he couldn't remember feeling so good, so apparently he has solved the problem. Meantime, a fellow who right now has no problems, Bobby Isaac. He's not far enough in front of A.J. Foyt yet to start hearing funny sounds in his car, but he's still pulling him a little bit each time they go around. Mark Donahue is still running, but he is well off the pace. And we'll put a clock on Bobby Isaac to give you an idea how fast he's traveling as he goes into lap number 301. 36 seconds is a pretty good thing to keep in mind. 36 flat is 152.2 miles an hour.
In the meantime, Bobby Allison has suddenly found a new groove and has closed within 5 seconds of Bobby Isaac. And we have now a 5-second interval that includes the second and third place drivers, Foyt and Bobby Allison.
At 300 laps, the speed creeping up, 126.501. At 290 laps, it was 125.828. So you can see the longer the green is out, the better they are. 36.8 seconds for the leader. That's 148.891 miles an hour. So for the first time, I believe, today, Chris, under green, in fact, I'm sure of it, for the first time today, we find the leader under 150 miles an hour. There's your leader on the left, the red car, number 71. And as we move back to take a look and find A.J. Foyt, you can see that Bobby Isaac's been able to pull A.J. a little bit each lap. And in third place, Bobby Allison, who in turn has been closing over the last 2 or 3 laps.
Apparently Allison right now is running faster than either Isaac and Foyt because he is chipping away at that lead.
Our crowd estimated at 82,500 here near the community of Hampton, just outside the city of Atlanta. The largest crowd they've ever had here was 88,000 in 1969, but they came close to it today. Remember, the American Sportsman follows our coverage of the Atlanta 500, so stay tuned for the American Sportsman at 6. And then Bobby Allison in car number 12 comes down toward the start-finish line. We look across to find the leader and the pursuer, and our feeling is that Bobby Allison is the man right now who is working away at what is called delta time. That is, he's picking up a little bit each time around. And at this particular moment, Bobby Isaac can't know exactly where he is because he's far enough back not to have any idea where he is. So we'll put a clock on Bobby, see how fast he's moving.
Keith, the leaders are compressing here. Foyt has now chipped a 7/10 of a second away. He's 1 second behind Isaac, and Bobby Allison has moved to within 3.5 seconds of Isaac. So they're getting closer and closer as we get nearer and nearer that all-important checkered flag with not enough gas to go round.
They're working lap 306. You're right, you did see Bobby Allison go by red car 11 driven by Buddy Baker. Buddy with all the power, but a bad chassis for this particular race, just has not had the kind of handling that he had to have. 36.5 seconds. That's 150.115 miles an hour. Now, Bobby Isaac was running at 148.8 miles an hour on our previous clocking of him, and you're watching the Atlanta 500 on ABC's Championship Auto Racing. More coming right after this. With 20 laps to go in the Atlanta 500, A.J. Foyt is the pursuer, and they had an interesting sign just put up by the Wood Brothers crew as he chases Bobby Isaac, the leader, and the sign read simply, gas, ? It is no longer essential to be secretive. Now you come right out and play all your cards in the open. Of course, they'd like to have him continue where he is without having to come in under green. If we have a yellow here in the next few minutes, it will obviously change the entire drama toward which we are building. But if they stay under green for the finish of this race, my goodness, those last few laps are going to be exciting. There's your leader, Bobby Isaac. A.J. Foyt right behind him, and he's closing. He's at about 1.5 seconds. And Bobby Allison also closing. You know, Chris, we've seen this. I know that you've seen it many times, and it perhaps is a trait of Bobby Isaac, that when he gets out in front and gets a substantial lead, he just does not stand on it quite as hard as when he is the pursuer or when somebody is racing him. And I think probably he's going to have somebody racing him here in just a moment as Foyt is closing steadily, pulling right in behind him, and they're in turn 3.
Well, now, here's a case where the tires may make the difference. If Foyt, for example, is on a different compound and a different tread, they could be either slower or faster. The 55 laps we found out before the race is about the amount of wear one can get on a set of tires and on the outside tires and the amount of laps you can get on a tank of fuel. It just so happened they're coincidental today.
And it does not always mean that a race driver has lifted his foot.
Right.
It may well mean that he needs to look for another groove.
Well, the tires wear, and then when they wear, they don't have the purchase against the asphalt they had when they're fresh and they're new, the bite. And as a consequence, speeds go down. Now, Allison was the last man to change his tires. He made his pit stop late, so his tires are 2 or 3 laps fresher than the others.
One of the most memorable races that I can recall was at Daytona a few years ago when David Pearson and Pete Hamilton finished almost wheel to wheel with Hamilton squeezing it out, and he was able to squeeze it out because they gambled under a yellow, took 4 fresh tires, whereas Pearson's crew took only 2. Average speed still creeping up a little bit. 310 laps. It was 126.7. Car number 15, David Pearson, now has dropped a lap off the pace. They're working 3:13. And the leader is Bobby Isaac with A.J. Foyt right behind him. We have 3 cars running in the same lap. Number 71, number 21, and number 12. Isaac, Foyt, Allison. Here comes Allison.
They've just given Foyt the go sign, as though he needed to be told.
Well, that may mean they're going to try to go all the way.
And look at him. How about that? He follows orders. He's closing now. He's a length behind the leader.
Heading for the end of lap number 314. A.J. Foyt drafting Bobby Isaac right now. Turn 1.
And he chilled himself a little bit there. The back end got a little loose as A.J. dumped it in the corner high.
Well, you can see it as well as we can. The question is now, here's the draft on the back straight, which is the longest straightaway of the 2. Running high. See how far up onto that high bank now. Bank at 24 degrees they've moved. Earlier in the day, they were running way down low. Foyt got his draft, making his run.
Look at the people.
Now it's horsepower, and he can't do it. Here it goes again.
11 and a fraction laps to go, Keith. And A.J. is making his move. And Bobby Allison is still gaining on these 2.
Here comes Bobby Allison up on the inside. Look at that Allison put on a charge. He came from way back. All right, those 3 cars are in the same lap. At the end of 500 miles, right at $19,000 plus. We got a dozen laps to go.
1 dozen laps to go, and look at this. And A.J. takes the lead.
Foyt. Isaac fights him back.
Door handle in the corner.
Looked like Bobby Isaac might have gotten a little loose up there, and Bobby Allison moves in side of him. A.J. Foyt has the lead. Allison and Isaac are side by side, and the crowd standing on their feet. 80,000 people just screaming. And Allison loses second place as Isaac comes fighting back. Lap number 316. 1, 2, 3. It's Foyt, Isaac, Allison. And Isaac now in the draft on the straight. Taking the low groove. Foyt high. Foyt leads.
What a 500-mile race this has been.
Whoa, and number 4, Bobby Allison got loose and almost lost it.
Shows how slippery the track is there, Keith. The tires are really The fuel tanks are virtually empty. The tires are virtually worn out. And here, look at them go out there.
And it's Foyt. Now, Allison has got to come back by Richard Petty. Petty moves up and lets him have the middle groove, and Bobby gets back by, but he has fallen off the pace of A.J. Foyt. It's Foyt. It's Isaac. It's Allison. Hang on. We got quite a finish coming for you at 318 laps. The order is Foyt, Isaac, Allison, 4 after this. There's the story right there. Richard Petty just ducked into the pits to get some gas. It is conceivable, Chris, that all three of these leaders could run out of gas.
Well, Buddy Baker came in. He's got the same kind of engine that Bobby Isaac has, and they got gas at the same time. Now,
A.J. Foyt has the lead. There in the middle, that's Bobby Isaac. Coming up on him again is Bobby Allison. Bobby Allison just almost lost it a moment ago, coming off turn 4. David Pearson is the 4th place car. He is 1 lap back. Donnie Allison is the 5th place car, and he is 1 lap back. But A.J. Foyt jumped on it, stood on it, and now he's opened up a little distance. Here's Bobby down inside of Bobby Isaac. Can you take him? Well, he's going to try. That's just flat-out horsepower right there.
And a little bit of bravura.
Bobby Allison has 2nd place.
It's a Mercury, a Chevrolet, and a Dodge.
6 laps. As we completed 322, Allison moved in to take 2nd place. And 5 laps to go. Well, there's not much you can do. I think you know the whole story. It's just really a question of whether or not A.J. Foyt, Bobby Isaac, and Bobby Allison have enough gasoline to go the rest of the way.
No one has gone among the contenders more than 55 laps today. They've all stopped within that interval. And now they're going beyond the 55-lap mark and praying and hoping.
There's the order.
In 2 laps to go, 55 laps on the lap. In 2 laps, the 55-lap fuel margin will have been used up.
All right, we've hit 324 with 4 to go.
Wood Brothers are...
Bobby Allison running at A.J. Foyt. Bobby Allison has the lead. He got the draft and a slingshot on the back straight. Can he hold it at that speed? He almost lost it a few laps ago up there, but he comes out of it in fine shape this time.
Chet. Look at the people. They're going out of their mind. It's
an incredible finish. A tough racetrack. It's tough on the man. It's tough on the equipment. An unforgiving racetrack. Yet they have run it incredibly hard today. And Bobby Allison, now that he has the lead over Foyt, can he pull him? He's opened up a 3-car length lead over A.J. Foyt. A.J. going hard, high into the turn. Allison goes low, lets it drift. Bobby Isaac running 3rd. Isaac dropping off the pace. He's got to get by Cuckoo Marlin. Marlin is in traffic with him now. Bobby Allison, A.J. Foyt, 1-2. The white flag is in the hand of John Bruner Jr. The final lap is going to be something. It's out-and-out horsepower from here in. Whose tires hang the best? Whose car handles the best? Whose engine can pull the hardest?
There's the white, and they pulled us on the gasoline, Keith.
We are in the final lap.
It'll be interesting to find out how much gasoline there's left in these cars when this one is over.
Foyt's running at him now. This is the last gas. Bobby Allison, right again, lets it drift up high, holds the middle groove now. Foyt running behind him. Foyt's not going to catch him. Bobby Allison wins it. A.J. Foyt is 2nd. Bobby Isaac is 3rd.
60/100ths of a second, the difference.
Allison wins, Foyt second, Isaac third. Back in just a moment. Bobby Allison is pulling off the racetrack, going into the garage. You know why? Just making victory lane, just rolling in there because he's out of gas. They're pushing him up onto the victory stand. He won the race, but he could not take the full victory lap because he ran out of gas. Wow, what a finish. Allison wins it. A.J. Foyt second, and Bobby Isaac third. David Pearson fourth. Donnie Allison is fifth. The executive producer of ABC's Championship Auto Racing is Roone Arledge. Coverage of the Atlanta 500 produced by Chet Forty, directed by Andy Sedaris. Technical director Werner Gunther. Stay tuned now for ABC's award-winning series, The American Sportsman, with Bing Crosby and a special feature on guide dogs for the blind. Next Saturday, the Professional Bowlers Tour moves to Akron, Ohio for the year's final event, the Firestone Tournament of Champions, right here on ABC at 3:30, 2:30 Central Time. And at 5 Eastern and Pacific, 4 Central Time, ABC's Wide World of Sports will feature the NCAA Swimming and Diving Championships from West Point, New York, and the World Ice Dancing Figure Skating Championships from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Once again, the winner of the Atlanta 500 is Bobby Allison. A.J. Foyt finished in second place, and Bobby Isaac third. Keith Jackson, along with Chris Economaki and Gary Campbell, saying so long from Atlanta International Raceway in Atlanta, Georgia.